What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to more C4, and today we're going to be wrapping up our Philadelphia Eagles 2025 NFL Draft preview coverage by breaking down all the defense in one video. I did have 5 videos planned. There's 3 days until the draft. Just kind of ran out of time a little bit, so I'm going to put my favorite 10 prospects that I think the Philadelphia Eagles should consider. On most of these guys, except maybe 2, are going to be players that would likely have to be selected either at pick 32 or if we trade back slightly into the second round. Like, these guys here are almost all locks to be top 50 players, if not top 40 players, and they're all going to fill specific needs for the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think necessarily any of these guys are a purely BPA player selection, which absolutely is going to be into play for the Philadelphia Eagles at pick 32. If someone surprisingly falls to us at 32, maybe if it's not a need, we'll likely take it. But I did want to try to find, like, who could potentially be our next Milton Williams? Who could come in and shore up that linebacker position next to Zack Baun? Who could come in and add corner competition with Keely Ringo and safety competition with Sidney Brown? Those are all kind of needs slash best players at said needs across the defense. And even though I'm only going to be highlighting 10 players for our top 10, I'm also going to have some secondary players, day 2, day 3 selections that I think would be absolutely awesome. And then when all is said and done, this video combined with our video breaking down maybe potential Dallas Goedert successors, some next Stoutland U candidates, hopefully we have a great pool of players that come the end of the 7th round, Philly has all of them selected. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. And let's start right away with the D tackles. Number 1 on my list. I'm going to start, before we look at the Milton Williams of the world, I want to look at the Jordan Davis of the world. Cam Jurgens just got a contract extension, and I think a lot of people are thinking next in line is Jordan Davis. But what did the Philadelphia Eagles think? Is he in their plans? Do they think that they can pay both Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis? Because Jordan Davis is sending a little bit. Like, it's not this yet, but it's starting to creep a little bit. Because last season, I felt he closed out last season, started to show that promise as a pass rusher, as a guy that can affect the pass game, which was the hope and dream and ceiling that was expected when we selected him in the first round over maybe a more popular pick like Kyle Hamilton. Was you get Jordan Davis, who is a unicorn, a 1 of 1 at nose tackle from an athletic standpoint. We knew that there was going to be snap limitations that came from Georgia. Those were concerns. But we knew he's going to be a great run defender. We knew he's going to do the dirty work and make others around him be better. And he's done that to this point. But it's like, that has a value. That has a limited value in the NFL. And when you are as athletic as Jordan Davis, you want to see, those snap count increase. You want to see the strength and conditioning, all that stuff, reach a very high level, which it feels like every single season there's been progress in that department. But you want to see him develop as a pass rusher. And we started to see that. I personally would like to give him a contract extension, but Jalen Carter is first and foremost, and if you don't think you can pay both of them, we may need to look at a run defender this year. Number 1 on my list is Derek Harmon out of Oregon. Now, he used to be a nose tackle, pure nose tackle, 350 pounds, then played at 330, and I think this year he's around 315, somewhere in that range, can give you that juice as an interior pass rusher. Left Michigan State, went to Oregon, and I feel like this would be borderline like a BPA. I wouldn't trade up for him. I do think if you want him, you probably would have to trade up for him, and that's going to actually be the same case for number 2 and number 3 on my list here. But there are mock drafts that he does fall to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'd be surprised if he gets past the Pittsburgh Steelers, but then you never know. Like, a lot of people right now think maybe Shedeur Sanders is going to be played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Chargers are another popular team. The Vikings are another popular team that need D linemen. But if Harmon falls down there and Philly does not feel like we are going to pay Jordan Davis, or Jordan Davis is not going to take the limited amount of money we're going to offer him because we have to give and break the bank for Jalen Carter, I think Derek Carter would be my number 1 pick if they are uncertain and there's question marks surrounding the run defense and Jordan Davis going into the future. I would say now secondary run defenders, and if we don't want to go Derek Harmon at my number 1, I think Tyleik Williams from Ohio State in the second round, for him to last to where we're picking in the second round might be wishful to say the least. But at another 330-pounder that gives a little bit of juice as a pass rusher, maybe better than expected for a 330-pounder, but you get a highly recruited, high-level, consistent, big games, has always showed up in the big game defender from that Ohio State defensive line. That's kind of a secondary value. And then my ultimate value pick, there's 2, and then oddly enough, they're right next to each other. You have Deion Walker, who at 6'7", 350 pounds, he would be, and his stock's kind of, it's been falling. He would be a guy that would be like an ultimate, like, let's just see. If Vic likes what he sees and Vic thinks he can maximize, there is untapped talent and potential there, even though his draft stock has never been lower. I like CJ West as well. 9.2 RAS score. Big-time athlete, almost 320 pounds. Now, this would be, and there's a reason why I think you have such an athletic run defender still being drafted and mocked in like the 4th, 5th round, is because he's very limited as a pass rusher. But if we just want to secure the services, we got, Moro Jomo. We got Jalen Carter. Maybe we'll draft who I'll talk about in the number 2 spot here as an interior D lineman pass rusher. We're going to be good there. We need guys that can come in and rotate and do the dirty work in the run defense. And I think CJ West, 4th, 5th round, absolutely all damn day. Popped every game for Indiana, making a big TFL in a run game. And I feel like he fits the Nick Sirianni mentality as well as an absolute dog. Go to number 2 on my list. We're now going to shift our focus from getting cover for maybe the potential uncertainty of Jordan Davis, who is going to step up in that Milton Williams role. We'd like to think, cautiously optimistic, Moro Jomo is going to eat into a lot of those snaps. He earned it, but you're going to need something else there. And I think Walter Nolan, the D lineman of Ole Miss, he's got a lot of momentum as of late as a very popular mock draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think we have to trade up to get him, to be honest with you. I think it'd be foolish to assume that he would fall to us at 32, but he's the guy. He is the number 1 guy that I think would be able to come in and with Ojomo make us forget Milton Williams was on the team last year. And that is the highest of compliments to Milton Williams. Walter Nolan, we don't have any RAS score. He didn't do any testing. But when you watch him play, you see former top-rated player in the country when he was coming out of high school. He was a 5-star. I think he was the number 2 recruit. I was reading his scout report, only behind Travis Hunter, and like every bit of it. And then last year at Ole Miss, 14 TFLs, 6.5 sacks. You want an interior pass rusher. You want a guy that has burst. You want a guy that has violent hands. You want a guy that lives in the backfield. And you want a guy that if you could find a way to put him on the same planet as Jalen Carter and just wreck game plans, Walter Nolan's the pick. And I would say above all, if you're watching this, you obviously assume Philadelphia Eagles draft preview content, stuff like that. You've seen all the hypothetical players at other positions. They're like, well, if we want him, maybe we can trade up for him. Seen it with tight end, seen it with linemen, seen it with corners. The only player I think right now that I would lock in, don't even care what the compensation was for us to move up for and be happy with it, is Walter Nolan. I think he would do disgusting things on this defensive line. That is why he is number 2 on my list. Now, 2 other players of value. We'll kind of work our way down here a little bit. Darius Alexander. We could double up on Toledo. We know Sirianni's buddy with Toledo's head coach. We just got Quinyon Mitchell. Only issue with Alexander, and he's another 9+ RAS, great athlete, but he's 25. He's got to be 25 in his rookie campaign. And drafting, and he's going to likely, again, even you want to be a little bit wishful, 2nd round pick, investing a 2nd round pick to replace Milton Williams. Milton Williams is 26 right now. So, like, that is just, I don't know. I don't love the optics of that. TJ Sanders is a guy Philly's brought in on a pre-draft visit. Same with Shamar Turner. I can live with both of these guys. Sanders is like a 9.4 RAS. Turner is, I believe he didn't test a whole lot, but he's a guy that's kind of, you're starting to buy the dip a little bit. If he would have declared last season, he would have been in the discussion, I think, for a 1st rounder, but did not have the greatest of seasons last year at A&M. Still was pretty damn good. But 2 years ago, he put up like 1st round pick numbers, especially if he went out there and tested. Another former 5-star recruit. I love Shamar Turner in the 2nd round. Him and Sanders would probably be my top 2 targets there. Ty Robinson at 288 pounds. He put up like a 9.8 RAS. Very athletic interior pass rusher from Nebraska. Put up probably the best D lineman numbers from a testing standpoint at the NFL Combine. And he would fit that mold of an interior pass rusher that would bring the juice. As we work our way down here a little bit, there are 2 that I want to highlight, and they're listed as edge rushers that we need to talk about for just from like a purely value standpoint. And number 1 is a player that reportedly the Eagles have had interest in, and that is Tyrion Ingram Dawkins from the Georgia Bulldogs. We all know how much we love Georgia Bulldogs. He is 276 pounds, so it's a little bit undersized. He tested out with the D tackles. He put up like a 9.7 RAS score, but he's one of those ones that it's skewed a little bit because he is so undersized. And he's probably more of a tweener, but like that's what Milton Williams was. And if we are looking for Georgia Bulldog pipeline, which is something that Howie Roseman values, and you want to look at a guy that's ascending, didn't do a whole lot in college, but you want to get an unknown athlete that can be coached up and is going to obviously thrive with the boys that we have in that D-line room, Ingram Dawkins, he's about probably a 4th, 5th round at this range. I love that value. But my number one sleeper, it is incredibly difficult to find an athlete that is comparable to Milton Williams. Milton Williams is almost Jordan Davis level, where it's just like, what the hell? Like, there is nothing that really compares to this freak of nature. I think I found one, and I love the tape. This is number one guy I've been watching and we're going to do this video. We're going to break down pure edge rushers, linebackers, corners, and safeties. The number one player that I've been watching is this guy that could be had for one of our 10 5th round picks. And his name is currently number 325. Aiden Huntington from Tulane. Okay, hear me out. Now, statistically, you gotta sift through the weeds here a little bit. Last season at Tulane, first year for Tulane, he had 5 TFLs, 4 sacks. 2 years ago, 2023, he played in the Sun Belt at Louisiana Monroe. 63 tackles, 16 TFLs, 8.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Okay, I'm interested. That's outstanding production for a D tackle. Milton Williams is a special athlete. Huntington is about as close as you could get for a guy that no one is talking about. Just told you 2 years ago. And that's not like I'm saying as a freshman. Yeah, this was 2023. He put up almost 10 sacks, bunch of forced fumbles. And then you look at the fact that, okay, let's look at the profile here. So he's a little bit shorter than Milton Williams, but he has longer arms. Bench press, same area code. 40-yard dash, 10-yard split. He actually has him beat in both those categories, which is shocking because Milton Williams' numbers were simply disgusting. Vertical, broad jump the same, shuttle, same area code. 3 cone is where it gets a little bit of a gigantic discrepancy, but Milton Williams is just like all time in that department. But Huntington, if you're looking for a guy that now, mock draft sites, mock draft simulators versus what actually happens in the draft, you almost can't even compare the two because anything can happen. But Huntington, for a guy that is getting 0 hype for a team like the Philadelphia Eagles that values athletic, I think the only team I saw bring him Huntington in on a visit was the Chicago Bears. When I was looking through all the visits trackers, that bummed me out. But also, that might not bum me out because maybe no one's showing him any interest. And if we could snipe him in the 5th round from the Chicago Bears, this is my guy. If we can walk away with Walter Nolan, trading up for Walter Nolan, and then you find a way to get Huntington in the 5th round, that D-line rotation is gonna be disgusting. Number 3 on the list. Number 1 was Derek Harmon. Number 2 was Walter Nolan. Number 3 is not even gonna be a player. I'm just gonna label it Vic Wildcard. There are 2 players I think we need to talk about. One is Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from A&M. We talk about from an athletic standpoint, he put up a 10 RAS. He is a freak of nature, 6'6", 290 pounds. He might be the guy that if you want to try and take a swing at someone that could be the next Milton Williams from just a purely, this guy's a freak of nature athlete, and maybe like Milton Williams, it's going to take a couple seasons for him to be like, oh shit, this guy's going to get $26 million a year. You could get someone like Shamar Stewart. I know that right now I've seen on like the Eagles Reddit and stuff, he's like the number 1 name that's popping up of like, who do you not want the Philadelphia Eagles to draft? I think him, and I'm going to put, because again, this is just number 3 official list as wildcard player, Nick Amenwari from South Carolina, a safety, which many could argue is another position of need for the Philadelphia Eagles. He also perfect 10 in the RAS score. They are the 2 freakiest of athletes in this year's draft. Both of them have gigantic question marks whether or not they're going to be pro ready, whether or not when it will take them to be pro ready, whether or not what is going to be their best position in the NFL. Are they going to be able to take, at least in Shamar Stewart's case, very, very sketchy college production and get past that in the NFL. And I'm going to say this, both these players, highly volatile. I think they are boom or bust prospects. But Vic Fangio, after what he did last season with Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalix Hunt in particular, were all 3 of those guys on top of the players that were already on the roster that elevated their games. The Moro Jomos of the world, the Nakobe Deans of the world, the Zack Bauns of the world. All those guys showed us that, the meme, Stoutland U. Jeff Stoutland could take an athlete, and we're going to bank on that athlete becoming a great player. I think Vic, after just 1 year, very limited sample size for what he's done with Philly, if he shows love in Shamar Stewart, and we trade up for Shamar Stewart, or we get him at 32, if he shows love and pounds the table a little bit, even though we didn't bring either one of these guys on a visit, in an Amenwari and there's athletic traits, I think we have to get excited about those picks. Just because of what If Vic likes him and Vic thinks he can develop these guys to be perfect fits in his scheme, we have to consider them because they have undeniable, unteachable traits. So that is number 3 on my list. Just the wild card of the 2 freak of nature athletes. It could work. I'd be excited. Usually that's when I'd be skeptical. I'd be like, all right, this is not Madden. All right, in Madden, give me these guys every day of the week. I want my freaking nature athletes. But in real life, a little bit scared about these guys. Not with Vic Fangio, I believe. Number 4 on my list is Donovan Ezuraku from Boston College, a currently popular mock draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles and a lot of these mock draft sites and simulators at 32. Born in Philly, grew up in New Jersey, so high probability that he is a Philadelphia Eagles fan, or at least knows and very familiar with the organization. We always love these guys, and by that, maybe he's like a discount Abdul Carter, we all know is an Eagles super fan for at least a couple more days. Ezuraku, awesome player. He would be tied with, as much as I would love to trade up for Walter Nolan as like a dream scenario. I think if we stay at 32, he might be number 1, if not tied for number 1 of like a realistic possibility selection at 32. He is an awesome player. Anytime I watch Boston College play, I think I saw about 4 full games. He was the best player on the field in all 4 of those games. You look at Ezuraku, ticks off a lot of boxes. Now, maybe a little bit shorter at 6'2", but he has 82-inch wingspan, 34-inch arms. I think you look at the jumping and agility testing, didn't do any 40-yard dash like that, but checks out as a very good athlete. Production last season, 80 tackles, 20.5 TFLs, 16.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, consensus All-American, Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC, was a first-team All-ACC. He is a guy that I don't think he gets enough credit as a run defender right now. I'm not necessarily saying that's a strength of his game, but I think he can set an edge. But if you want a guy that is going to get after the quarterback, if you want a guy that, unlike maybe your Nolan Smiths, unlike your Brandon Grahams of the world, who I think are going to be run defenders first, and now we're starting to see with like Nolan Smith in particular, like the pass rush is coming. But we knew right away getting Nolan Smith that he was going to be a good run defender. Sideline to sideline, get off his blocks, he can track down running backs. Maybe he needs to work on his pass rush moves a little bit. We had that with Brandon Graham, early on when Brandon Graham was a PFF darling, not getting a lot of sacks, doing the dirty work, getting the pressures. I think Ezuraku is kind of the inverse of that. You're going to bring in a guy that I would not be surprised if he comes in at 32, would be a part of this pass rush rotation, and like that's just what he gets. He finds a way to get after the quarterback, and I think that at 32 might be the best value pick that the Philadelphia Eagles could get at also a position of need. Now, is he going to be available? Like, this is a guy that I've seen go as high and be mocked as high as potentially going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 20s. So I do think, even though it shows 32 on this site, it's going to take a bit. It's not a lock that he would be available at that range. So I do have a couple other pass rushers I want to talk about. I'll put a couple honorable mentions here as well. Instead of Ezuraku in that role, I like JT Tuimoloau. I think he has the pedigree of a Howie Roseman pick. Former 5-star recruit, has won a lot of football games, played a lot of good football for Ohio State. I also, my sleeper for the position is Braden Swinson from LSU. Wasn't super privy to him early during the regular season, wasn't watching a whole lot of LSU games. Stood out to me at the Combine, went back and watched, had a breakout year, formerly Oregon transfer, now at LSU. Super long pass rusher, big fan as well. I think he might be one of the value picks at pass rush. He looks like a guy that could go second, third round, and if he falls in that range, and that's where Philly wants to go and address pass rush, I'm going to be all about it. But I do think at 32, as it stands, my favorite pass rusher for the Eagles would be Ezuraku. Number 5 on my list is another pass rusher, James Pierce Jr., a player that a lot of us are kind of hoping would fall to us if we fell in love with him, which I don't think we did because we didn't bring him in for a visit. And if you want to maybe aggressively trade up for a guy like James Pierce, who has some questions and concerns about character, you probably want to bring him into a visit. But if he falls to us at 32, the BPA, we got to take him, could absolutely be there for Philadelphia. James Pierce Jr., if you said, I want a speed rusher with proven college production, you could make an argument after Abdul Carter, James Pierce Jr. would be number 2 on this list. 2 years ago, 2023, 14.5 TFLs, 10 sacks, first team All-SEC. Last year, 13 TFLs, 7.5 sacks, first team All-SEC. 6'5", 250, 81-inch wingspan. 4'7" with a 156 10-yard. Go get the quarterback. That's his job. Now, I will say, as much as we like to gas up athletic traits, he did only have 31 inches in the vertical, which was Not great at all. Very shocking to see. Didn't have a 3-cone or a short shuttle. So it's okay. Well, at worst, you are a tall, explosive speed rusher that has a couple moves that are absolutely perfected to go out and get after the quarterback. I think you still need to develop him a little bit. I think you still need to... He's a Vic Fangio guy. You still need to. So the question marks, as long as the character checks out, these are all things that I think Vic could rectify. You know what Vic can't rectify? A guy that's 6'5", 280, 4.47, 156, 10-yard split to get after the quarterback. And you pair that with a Nolan Smith, you pair that with a Jalex Hunt, we're out to the races. How many misses? Like, you ain't getting no Mississippis. You ain't getting no steamboats for opposing team's quarterback if you could find a way to throw James Pierce on this defensive line. Him and Nolan Smith, you could arguably give the Philadelphia Eagles the biggest advantage over any other defense in the NFL for speed to power, getting after the quarterback. So I think it's unlikely at this point, without doing your homework, James Pierce would have been one of those names. I would have loved to see Philadelphia bring in for a top 30 visit, do the homework. I don't think he's a guy you draft without doing your extra homework on, but it is a scenario, and I would, if Ezra Raku's off the board and James Pierce is on the board, I would totally be fine with that pick at 32. Player number 6 on my list is Jihad Campbell, hybrid player from Alabama. Now, he's listed as a linebacker. A lot of sites have him listed as a linebacker. A lot of smart people in this community also question whether he could be a pass rusher in today's NFL. And I've talked about him before on the channel. I think that if you like what Zack Baun brought to the defense, and you think what would be better than one Zack Baun than maybe two Zack Baun, then Jihad Campbell's a guy that you absolutely want to see the Philadelphia Eagles draft. He is a hybrid. He is a player that doesn't have a defined position. Those players can sometimes be risky. For every Zack Baun success story, you get an Isaiah Simmons, where just he came out of Clemson. No one really knew what position he was going to play, and unfortunately, hasn't really worked out. He has not, at minimum, lived up to the expectations that we thought we saw of the player coming out of Clemson. So you have to have a plan in place, but I think what Vic has valued at linebacker, Jihad Campbell would able to do for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think his pedigree is the profile that Howie Roseman would love to draft from. You're getting a guy from New Jersey, so somewhat local, 11 and a half TFLs, 5 sacks on over 100 tackles last season, 2 forced fumbles, had a pick, was a second-team All-American, first-team All-SEC, almost 6'3", 235, 4.52, 158, 10-yard split. And I just think you get a ball of clay. He's not as... His projection in the NFL, maybe he's not as uncertain as like a Shamar Stewart or a Nick Amon-Worry, but he is like close to that in like you have to have a plan for him. You have to decide. I don't think you could have him just straight up be an off-ball linebacker and expect all season for him just like covering tight ends and running backs all year. I think you'd have to do a little bit of both and figure out where he's going to get in, where he fit in. You know what I'm saying? I think we saw that with the reports about Zack Baun, right? We brought in Zack Baun. He wanted to rush the passer. Vic said, hey, let's play a little bit of off-ball linebacker as well. They still used and would blitz Zack Baun and line him up on the line of scrimmage, but eventually they shifted to just focus on one thing. And I kind of think that is the exact approach you have to have with Jihad Campbell. Be like, oh, well, hey, his agent said pass rushers get paid a little bit more money. Maybe they push for that. And I think maybe you can line them up a little bit. Maybe every now and again you can have him and Zack Baun rotate as inside linebackers that can drop in on the line and rush after the quarterback. But I think ultimately with a Jihad Campbell, the mistake that a lot of these previous teams drafting these positionless players have made are just like how about we just let you do a little bit of everything? And I feel like jack of trades, master of none doesn't work with these hybrid guys right away. I think you got to figure out the number one thing that you're good at, and then once they get that sorted out, then you can start exploring and expanding the things that they used to be good at. And I feel like for Jihad Campbell, I'd have him start out as a linebacker, have him play next to Zack Baun in this hypothetical that we go get him, and then much like we use Zack Baun a couple times a game, line him up on the line of scrimmage. And I actually think the flexibility that we would get to be able to kind of move these Swiss Army knives, if we had both Zack Baun and Jihad Campbell moving all over the field, would make it just that much more difficult for opposing teams' offensive coordinators and for quarterbacks in the huddle to diagnose where these guys are going to be attacking them from or if they're going to be dropping off into coverage. So I think you can make an argument pound for pound for this defense, especially with the uncertainty of N'Kobe Dean, especially with the uncertainty of I don't really think they're going to hand the position to Jeremiah Trotter Jr. without any competition. If we could get Jahad Campbell and Zack Baun playing together, that might be even better than Jalen Carter and Walter Nolan. Like, if I'm looking at pairings of rookies to existing players, I may have to say the players I'm going to talk about in this whole list, Jahad Campbell and Zack Baun playing together might even be better than Carter and Nolan. Number 7 on my list is an off-ball linebacker, Carson Schweisinger from UCLA. Very, very weird case. Looking at Schweisinger, just could not get on the field the previous 2 years at UCLA. Then out of nowhere in 2024, 136 tackles, 8.5 TFLs, 4 sacks, 3 PBUs, 2 interceptions, first-team All-American, first-team All-Big Ten, led the Big Ten in tackles, 6'2", 240. Didn't really do any testing outside of, we didn't get 40-yard dash or anything like that, but he almost had a 40-inch vertical. His short shuttle and 3-cone were pretty damn good. And he's just, if you need an off-ball linebacker, sideline, guy that could drop back into coverage, he is the number 1 player in this year's class because he doesn't have kind of the uncertainty, positionless value, and or confusion and lack of certainty that a Jahad Campbell has. Someone like Schweisinger, guarantee you, he will be starting for whatever team drafts him as off-ball linebacker. And I think that there could be a debate that, like, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, right, and you're valuing that linebacker position, maybe you don't want another Zack Baun. Maybe you paid Zack Baun to be your Zack Baun, and then you need your Nakobe Dean. You need your guy that can come downhill in the run game and then drop back up into coverage. That is your role. And I think Schweisinger, if that is how Philadelphia wants, and they want to complement to Baun, not overdo it, not too much of one thing, even though it's good. Too much of something, too much chocolate ice cream can still give you a tummy ache. Maybe that's how they view someone like Jahad Campbell on this Eagles defense. But someone like Schweisinger could complement him. If there's a lot of uncertainty about Nakobe Dean, be it his availability next season, be it do we give him a contract extension just because he looked awesome last year, but he's proven even more so that he can't stay healthy. He's just maybe too small for the NFL, maybe too injury prone. Maybe that's going to hurt the contract negotiations. Maybe that's that minimum certainly hurts how the Philadelphians could view Nakobe Dean's role in this team long term, be it come contract extension time, because I mean that rookie contract is running up. So if you kind of have uncertainty there, the same way that we talked about at the very beginning, maybe uncertainty around Jordan Davis and his contract, I think Schweisinger, if he is there in the second round, if he is falling in the second round, if we come up and get him, that is going to be a day 1 starter. That is absolutely plug and play. He would start next to Zack Baun, and as cruel and as much as I don't want to say it, I think he's good enough to make us be like, well, Nakobe Dean can't stay healthy, so this is our linebacker of the future. Other linebackers like that I really like in this year's class, I do like Chris Paul, probably the best tackler in all of college football, barely missed any tackles last season. I know Vic Fangio would love that. I think Smail Mondon from Georgia fits the Georgia Bulldog pipeline, great athlete as well, would be good value. Lastly, maybe my value at this linebacker position, I'm a big fan of Nick Martin. Nick Martin ran a 4.5, great athlete. I think, who did he track down? Xavier Worthy is kind of like his highlight. He chased down Xavier Worthy, the fastest 40-yard dash. He's 5'11", kind of undersized like Nakobe Dean, but I think similar to Nakobe Dean, that's going to get undervalued, and the dog mentality, the athleticism is going to triumph maybe the size concerns in the NFL, and I'm looking in that 5th round money range. Nick Martin is probably my favorite day 3 linebacker for the Eagles to potentially target. Player number 8 on my list, now looking in the secondary, is the player that I feel like Philly's done their most work on, and that is Maxwell Hairston, the corner out of Kentucky. Now, I think corner overall is an interesting debate. I think a lot of us like the depth that we have. I think a lot of us would like to, hey, let's let Ricks and Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo, who might have the inside track right now, let them fight out. I think all those guys could absolutely be starters for the Philadelphia Eagles in the right scenario, right? We saw flashes out of Ricks. I was like, man, this guy, there could be something there. We've been stashing him for a minute. We've seen flashes out of Keely Ringo where, I mean, you can make that. He's still younger than half these guys that are going to be in this draft class. So there's still upside there as well. Big-time athlete. But if they do want to go and add more competition to that spot, I think based off of how Vic nailed the corners last year in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, if he says Hairston is going to be like the next one, he's going to be in the Rookie of the Year discussions, he's going to be a lockdown corner, I think we need to consider because Hairston has very desirable traits. When you look at the production of Hairston, last year only played half the season due to a shoulder injury, so I'm going to compare the last 2 seasons, combine them. 2023, 2024, he's 16 PBUs, 6 interceptions in his 2 years starting as an SEC corner. just under 6 feet tall, 183 pounds, so a little light in the ass. Not a great run defender, but I mean, neither was Slay, and he was the best corner we've had for a very long time. Just under a 40-inch vertical, ran a 4.28, and then when they broke down all the fast 40-yard dashes and they broke it into like who hit the highest miles per hour, he was the fastest player at the combine last year. And I am never, in any way, shape, or form, going to turn down adding more speed. I put up with enough years of this Philadelphia Eagles team having no speed on defense that if we just want to start hoarding speed, I am perfectly fine with this. And I think with Hairston, you get a guy that's purely an outside corner, so he would absolutely come in and compete with Keely Ringo and Camp for that outside spot. And I think both those guys, excellent athletes. Let them battle it out. I will say, stylistically, I would always just assume that Vic Fangio would want these corners that want to get involved in the run game for his scheme, like your Cooper DeJeans and your Quinyon Mitchells. Hairston's kind of against that in a way, but Philly certainly tipped their hand a little bit with how much homework and public information they've given of their interest in Hairston, that I do think at the end of the day, a proven SEC productive corner who's the fastest player in this class, that tested anyways, because obviously you got your Travis Hunters and stuff like that, with the track record of hitting as well as we did with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And I'm going to say, if you've seen my reaction to Cooper DeJean, I knew Cooper DeJean was going to be incredible, but we had our pick of our litter at corner. Quinyon Mitchell, Terry Arnold were kind of like the first big two. And when we made that pick, I was like, I like this pick. I love it. But now we're always going to have, did we make the right call? Did Quinyon Mitchell deserve enough to go over Terry Arnold, who was Alabama and all that stuff? And it looks immediately, yes, we hit that home run, grand slam out of the park. And if Vic Fangio has those exact same vibes and fall in love with this corner right now in Maxwell Hairston, you run that pick up to the podium, and we have a shutdown rookie contract secondary for the next 4 seasons. Some secondary options at corner that I like. Trey Amos has got some pre-draft visit hype from Philly. I like it. Maybe not a freak of nature athlete, but he does feel more like a Vic Fangio quarterback, can do the dirty work. I like Benjamin Morrison as a value pick. I think he's a classic buy the dip type player. 2 years ago, locked for the first round. Now some people have him slipping into like the late second round, third round. I believe we did like a virtual visit with him. Saw that on social media yesterday. I think there's a lot of value potentially to be had in Benjamin Morrison. Had some injuries and stuff like that. The last player that we showed interest in, kind of tilting their hand a little bit, is Jacob Parrish from Kansas State. Parrish is an interesting case. I believe he was recruited as a safety, and then he would play outside corner and a little bit of nickel as well. 5'9", every bit 5'9". Now he's 190, ran a 4.35, 37-inch vert. Productive player. 2023, 13 PBUs, 4 picks. Couple TFLs. Last year, couple TFLs, 8 PBUs. Interesting player. Kind of feels like you want the versatility, inside-outside versatility. He's played a little bit of safety. And honestly, if I had to kind of throw a roll, feels Avonte Maddox-ish, because Avonte Maddox was a very good athlete. He ran a 4.3 as well. So I think that's kind of how they would view Parrish. Now, I think, do I want to draft, like in the third round, a guy to be the Avonte Maddox replacement? Maybe not. But I'm a fan of his game. He's a guy that wasn't really on my radar. And then as soon as I saw Philly brought him in for a top 30 visit, you just see the versatility. He's a great athlete. And like that's kind of the vibes I got. Jacob Parrish, Avonte Maddox-ish. Number 9, number 10 on this list, we're going to finish with safeties. Up first at 9 is going to be Malaki Starks, the safety out of Georgia. Probably for Philadelphia, staying at 32, the most discussed player in this class. The Georgia pipeline is true. The value is true. Buying the dip slightly is true because a year ago, he was considered a consensus blue chip player for this year's draft class. Would he go top 10 was the discussion. Now it's, well, Eamon went to the combine and tested off the charts. Malaki Starks did not. He didn't have his greatest season with Georgia last year, even though I did think at the combine in particular, as dominant as Eamon was during the drills, Malaki Starks was equally as dominant when it got to the on-field drills. I also hate talking about safeties because right now as it stands, the Canadian Sidney Brown, who I think we all can agree could absolutely be a fan favorite with his play style and his physicality and his athleticism. If we go safety, it's going to be essentially screwing him over from the inside track of being a starter on the defense. But I think stylistically, and I've talked about this before, Philly kind of showed their hand. I think the reason why we pretty much gave away CJ, pennies on the dollar from a roster standpoint is Vic's like, I can't have a safety that improvises that much. I can't have a safety that is that volatile as a run defender. And I think when you look at Sidney Brown, That's kind of his game. Sidney Brown is all gas, no brakes, ball of muscle, running at you. He's going to run at you. He's going to run and attack the football. Boom or bust play, which is why he's so exciting. But I don't think Vic Fangio would want that on his defense. It's someone like Malaki Starks, who is a pure technician. A guy that would, I think, out of all the players that we could get at 32. Now, we might have to trade it for Malaki Starks. Similarly to like a Walter Nolan if we want him. Similarly to a Jahad Campbell if we want him. But some mock drafts will have him fall to 32. He could certainly be a candidate, especially if Malaki Starks is still on the board in the 20s and you want to leapfrog. Maybe the Vikings are a popular team that can get him. Some people have had I've seen him go to the Chiefs in certain mock drafts. But this is a guy, was a freshman All-American, back-to-back seasons, 2023-2024, is a first-team All-American, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. I mean, he just wasn't a freak of nature athlete, but like a 4.50 in the 40-yard dash. 33-inch verticals a little bit below, and the three cone and the shuttle were fine, not great. But you just have a guy that, as far as zone coverage, thrives. Big scheme. As far as intelligent diagnosing plays, he's made plenty of, oh shit, if I don't make this tackle, that's a touchdown type play. His versatility is huge. And I think if you had to look towards this draft and be like, can we get someone who could immediately step into CJGJ's role? Maybe he doesn't have the ball hawking ability of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but also I think you can make the argument CJGJ wasn't necessarily a ball hawk. He was just right place in the right time. How many times last year did CJGJ feel like just steal like 2 to 3 picks? It felt like he stole out of the hands of someone else that was about to get one. That maybe is the improvisation that Vic didn't love. I think he took probably about at least 2 of Quinyon Mitchell's picks last year. I think like someone like Malaki Starks, I'd be shocked. And the reports are he came for a late top 30 visit for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe the perfect fit out of all the players we've talked about for a Vic Fangio defense would be Malaki Starks. And if we could get him, and he does thrive like we assume he would, and you have him for 5 years, you have Coop and Q for another 4 years, you know, you're eating good. You're living good. He'd be an awesome pick. There's no bashing this whatsoever. But if we don't go Starks, maybe he goes high. We don't want to trade up for him. There are still secondary safeties that I'm a big fan of. I have 2 honorable mentions, but number 10 on my list, I'm going to wrap it up. Andrew Mukuba from Texas. So many times you'd go watch Texas' defense play, especially last year. They were on TV. I think I watched 7 full, I had it in my notes, 7 full Texas games. Mukuba, most of those games, was the most valuable player I saw on the defense, right? Jadair Barron, they had Colin Simmons, big-time pass rusher. Anthony Hill at linebacker is going to be a freak of nature in the NFL. But I would be honest and argue that Mukuba was the guy that was standing out the most on tape, which is maybe a little bit of a hot take, especially because Jadair Barron at corner in the same secondary, he's getting that first-round buzz. But Mukuba, former high-round recruit from Clemson, I think he was a 5. I'm looking at my notes. He was a 4. He was a top 10 safety recruit the year that he came out. But last season at Texas, 4 TFLs, 11 PBUs, 5 interceptions. Just under 6 feet tall, 195 pounds, 4.45. Awesome run defender. Coverage. He feels like, to me, a more controlled Vic Fangio Sidney Brown. I feel like that would be his play style. I think he flies to the football. I think we saw last year in particular, turning a lot of PBUs. He's had a lot of PBUs in his time between Clemson and Texas, but last year he was turning those into turnovers and interceptions. And I think, technically speaking, I think he might be able to play a little bit more in that Vic Fangio structure. And the value that could be had. Again, it's just me trying to reference, like, I've done a lot of mock drafts, but there's a chance, like, 3rd round. I think Daniel Jeremiah doesn't have him in his top 50. I think Dane Brugler has him as a 4th round pick. Absolutely. If we miss out, swing for the fences, miss out on Malaki Starks, give me Mukubu and Sidney Brown trying to fight out for a start, because that is an awesome training camp battle. Now, to round out a couple other safeties that I do like that could fit that role, I do like Billy Bowman from Oklahoma, another guy that's a little bit more undersized, kind of that safety nickel type player, but a lot of production at Oklahoma. I think he would fit a role. I think Kevin Winston, coming off injury at Penn State, he's a great athlete. That would definitely need to come into some consideration. And lastly, Malachi Moore. I've talked about buying the dip. A couple years ago, he was one of the most hyped up freshmen that we've seen in a very long time as a DB in SEC play. He was supposed to be the next Minkah Fitzpatrick, kind of moved around, shuffled around a lot with the changing of the coaching staff at Alabama. I think there's a little bit of buying a dip, especially if he lasts into like the 4th, 5th round, which is expected right now. I think you're getting better than a 4th, 5th round player in a Malaki Moore. And, I mean, safety is certainly a position I think the Philadelphia Eagles would like to address, as much as it pains me to say, as a Sidney Brown truther. There you go, fellas. Those are the 10 players plus alternative options on the defensive side of the ball that I think the Philadelphia Eagles have to target in this year's draft class. Number 1, Derek Harmon. If we want to look at Jordan Davis, and we don't love the optimism of a long-term contract there. Number 2, Walter Nolan. Number 3, the wild card spot of a Shamar Stewart or Iman Warrior. Vic likes him. I like him. Number 4, Ezra Aku as a pass rusher. Number 5, James Pierce Jr. Number 6, Jahad Campbell. Number 7, Carson Schweisinger. Number 8, Maxwell Hairston. Number 9, Malaki Starks. And number 10, Andrew Mukubu. Secondary needs. What do you guys think about that Huntington guy? I found him. I want him. Huntington at D-line. Jalen Connors at tight end. If we can't get the Walter Nolan, if we can't get the Mason Taylor, or somehow, some way, we win the lottery and a Tyler Warren at tight end, and then eventually trade Dallas Goedert. Jalen Connors at tight end, Aiden Huntington at D-tackle. Those are the 2 guys. 5th round, bank it, will be good NFL players. Swinson, Tui Maliau at pass rusher. Zach Martin, Smail Munden at linebacker. Parrish at corner. Bowman and Malaki Moore at safety. There are a bunch of names. I'd love to hear, out of all these names, who do you guys like? Do you guys like any of these guys? Have you also found some sleepers that you want to share? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, your first time stopping by, this is absolutely the week you want to subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot of content reacting to all Philadelphia Eagles draft picks, as well as maybe, I'm not going to comment much more. There might be more stuff coming to the channel on top of that here this week. So if you do enjoy the content, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. Until next time, it's your boy C4. Say peace, I love you. Have a good one. Go Birds!